Hello, welcome, adios. My name is Devi. I'm a Live2d artist and rigger. I'm gonna try to teach you guys how to rig your own models in small parts, and today I'm using my own model. It's a practice one that, if you wanna support me, you can find that on my Ko-fi in the description. Today I will only be covering how to rig the eyes and setting up the model, and I will do more in the future. And if, there's any questions, I'll try and answer them in the comments. I would like to mention, I'm no professional. I do this as a hobby. I have taught myself everything, and I still need to watch other tutorials, and I will link the ones that have helped me with what I'm teaching you down below. I'm not the best at explaining, but I'll try my best, and I'll try to make everything understandable, and yeah, try and help you all. If there's any questions, please let me know. Let's get started. For starters, we need to set everything up, grouping things together and making them a little more neat so that you don't get overwhelmed later on. I like making folders. I also deleted some parameters that I simply don't use, like cheek, some eyebrow things, as I personally don't use them. But this is optional for you. It's up to how it helps you. I separated my parameters into folders for face, extra, face physics, toggles, hair physics, and body. But you need to make the folders how it makes sense to you, in case if you want to be extra neat and put them into, for example, just for eyes and stuff like that, then you do that. It's completely up to you. I like making them all color-coded, because of course I do. I also added some parameters I think I might need for physics and toggles later on. But this is, again, optional, and you can do this later as you go. I also end up doing that in this video. Next up, we have to make our deformers, which is basically where you group things together and make it a lot easier later on. You have to, for the first one, select every single layer and click on the warp deformer button on the top. And just call it basically anything. I just call it everything because that's what it is. And then we will again select everything, and we will create our mesh for the model. I like just auto generating them. If I need it more fancy, a little bit more detailed, I can just go in and do it later. But with a simple model like this, you don't need to do that. So just do heavy on the mesh. That's what I would recommend at least. Then we need to make some deformers, grouping different things together that you might want, like the entire head, the face, hood, and so on. I like to be very minuscule because you kind of need to later on as well. And just as a side note, if you are unsure if you got every single layer right or you grouped them together right, you can just move them around with the deformer. That's what I do whenever I'm unsure, and I would highly recommend doing that if you aren't sure if you did it right. Next up is the draw order and the clipping of the layers, and basically the program Live2d will not keep any clipping you've done outside of the program. So basically, if you have any clipping, you need to do that manually, sadly. And yeah. Now we start the actual rigging. If you have two identical eyes, you only have to rig one of them. So don't worry about the second one for now. I like taking the hair off of my poor girl while rigging, just so I can see the eyes a little better. You only technically need 2 keyframes to be able to make it work, but I like to add a third just because I like to add a shocked expression. You don't have to do this, but you do this by editing the parameter. I put mine as 1.2, as I find that is what works best for me. Once you get done with playing around with the keyframes, you need to select your eyelid or top eye or whatever it's called for you and make a transform path, which does so you can drag around your layer into points, and it just generally makes it easier. You just need to drag them down until they look like they're closed eyes in a neutral position. We'll make her smile later, but for now it should be 0.0 for the default, and 1.0 is the default eyes, and 1.2 is this shocked expression, which you will need to drag it into place as well. You basically have to do this with each part until it looks right and up to your standard. And with the lashes, you just have to rotate them. I just squeeze them down until they look the other way. And with the eye whites, which is the white part of the eye, you just gotta slot them down and hide them and make sure they look okay. Next up, we have to make our eye pupil mesh. We need to make the mesh for that. I like to make a circle around the entire thing, and then another one for good measure, just in case the mesh messes up. And then a little circle around the black part of your eye, just so you can change that later with physics and everything like that. It just makes it a little smoother since I only have one layer for this one. Then we have to make our eyes Y and X. I like to make a deformer so I can just switch them around a little bit easier without messing up the actual eye. And yeah, you just need to put them in the direction of the eye, and when you have done the normal up, down, left, right, then you group the two together and you click on synthesize corners, as that basically just does the corners for you, which is a lot easier than trying to match it all up. Next up, we have to make our eyes a little more lively. This is optional, but it's quite easy to do. First, select all of your eye. That isn't like the pupils and the shines and whatever else you have, but everything outside and the eye whites, we need that, and we make that into a deformer. And basically, you just move the middle green part around and it makes it more lively, and you do that with with eye, Y, and X, and just slaughter around and emphasize corners again, which in my opinion is quite easy. Now we will do the smile, which you just basically have to drag around the same points you were doing before. You only need 2 points, a smile and a default. This will vary depending on your art style and how dramatic you want this smile to be, but you basically just have to make her look like she's smiling. You have to do all 3 points of default, closed, and shocked, and yeah, just do it to your preference. Next we will do the physics. I personally only use 4 separate ones for this, but it's completely up to you how many you want to do. It just depends on how bouncy you want it, honestly. We will start with the first one, the iris. You can use a warp deformer for this, but I personally just use the layer since I haven't used that one yet. You need 3 points on the parameter. The middle one is your default as always, and just make it look bouncy like I do here. Then, due to how I did my mesh, I can do some physics for my pupil. Even though my pupil is on the same layer as my iris. I just want to dilate them and shrink them just to make it look a little better and more lively later on. Then we have to set up the physics. Make a physics group called I1 or I left or anything you want. Then we input our eye open as the input, and it should be at 100. So that's just 100% on that. I like having 3 pendulums. I'm probably saying that wrong, but this is what will determine how bouncy your thing is, and yeah, just put as many as you want and play around with it. Then clicking on output settings gets us to another tab where we will be able to put our output for eye physics that we just worked on. You can play around with the scale, but I personally like setting it quite high as I feel like that makes the physics smoothly. Next up, I just like adding a little bit more physics for the entire eye instead of just, for the blinking and the pupil and iris. So I grab the deformer that is my eye outside, the one I use for the X, Y, and everything on the eyes. And I just kind of move them up and down to give it a jumping, bouncing effect, just like make it look a little nice. And then we basically just add it into our output with the others and play around with the scale of that as well. Next is the eyebrows. Again, you can use a warp deformer for this, but I choose not to for most of this. I usually don't use the eyebrow X or angle, as I just want mine to be quite basic, but you can always do what you'd like. Eyebrow Y is just up and down, and it should move as such. Then for the form, 1.0 is the shocked expression, and the negative is the frowning. You can use either a temporary deformer for this, but I personally use the brush and a warp deformer to get the shape of it right. Next, we have to duplicate our eye, so we don't have to do everything twice, basically. You can start by selecting everything of the eye that we just rigged. Also the warp deformers and anything else you might have used. Make that into a warp deformer and just copy paste it, and then it should be duplicated. Then you right click and press flip down on the bottom, which will just flip the entire thing onto the right spot, basically. So yeah. Now you might notice that some of the parameters might be a little wonky, like the eyeballs and everything. All you have to do is select the new layer or the new reflected eye, and just right click on the parameter you want changed and select reflect. This will basically just flip the imaging, and once you fiddle around with that, you can get it right. Then of course we want to be able to wink, and we want to be able to have more expressive eyebrows and everything, where everything doesn't follow each other. By that you have to select again the new eye and the warp deformers and everything you just copied, and you have to right click on the parameter and manually select which parameter you want it moved down to. Now if you're like me and you changed up the eyes open with how much it can go up, like instead of it being 1.0, it's now 1.2. You just have to make sure that the other thing that you're trying to put it down to is also 1.2 and is able to do that. And yeah, you just kind of have to do that. And with the physics, you have to kind of duplicate the layers and get them all in there, and you just kind of have to repeat the same process for the physics again to get it all right and on its own. So that's the end of the video. This is how she's looking. She's very cute, like always. If you want to get this model and work on her yourself, it's down in the description for $7, I believe. She's very nice. I drew her myself. If not, there's plenty of free options. It's just if you want to support me. And yeah, thank you for watching. And if you like this track, it is made by my dear friend, which I will put a bunch of his links down in the description. And yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. And I hope to see you soon. Bye!